Today is the day. Update 104 is going out to all Anthem players. That means we're going to be getting legendary missions, vanity chests, and a ton of changes coming to Anthem. So hey everyone, what's up? Open World Games here. Yes, we have a lot to talk about. Check this out. This was posted recently by AJ, community manager of Anthem, and yeah, we're going to be seeing a ton of stuff added today to Anthem, but also look at all of the patch notes here. Tons of changes, fixes, bugs being addressed, of course, weapon fixes, changes to creatures. But this is the big stuff that we're going to be talking about right here, is the changes to our Javelin. So there are a ton of updates to our Javelins here. Every single one of them is going to be changing, whether it's a buff, a nerf, or something like that. So that's what this video is going to be focusing on today. So we're going to be diving into that, well, right now. So hold on to your butt. So if you missed what's coming up here in the update, of course, update 104, of course, we're going to be getting those legendary missions, the vanity chest, and stuff like that. I did several videos about this. I'm going to include those in the description below. But today, what we're going to focus on specifically is the new stuff, the stuff you do not know about, and that includes the Javelin changes. This was not covered in previous videos. So, let's first of all go ahead and begin with the Colossus here and talk about what is being changed. So, Colossus components, ablative shielding is increased buff to 40% for 10 seconds, was 20% for 5 seconds. It says Grand Entrance, improved ability to reliably trigger on heavy impacts and air melee slams. It says Reinforced Hull, increased buff to 33%, was 20%, and removed cooldown. Shock treatment was hitting enemies with ordnance launcher abilities, temporarily lowers thruster heat buildup by 30% for 5 seconds. Now, it says taking damage increases all damage by 8% for 10 seconds, stacking to 10. So there's some big changes here. It's not just buffs, it's like fundamental changes going forward with some of this stuff as well. Now, what about Stalwart's badge? It says was on shield break, increases all ability damage by 40% for 5 seconds. Now it's going to be when hit with a status effect, increases all gear damage by 40% for 10 seconds. Now, what about synchronized frame? It says changed to hitting an enemy from defeating an enemy. And then Colossus gear. It says Fist of the Crucible. Let's talk about this one. It says was Victor's advantage. Defeating an enemy increases flamethrower damage by 30% for 10 seconds, stacking to 5. Now it has been changed. It's going to be hitting an enemy increases flamethrower damage by 12% for 10 seconds, stacking to 10. Next up, we have some other additional changes here as well, including best defense. It says increased base damage by 25%. Black powder increased base damage by 25%. Cooldown reduced to 1 second, was 4 seconds. Solvent green increased base damage by 40% for that one. Titan's Hell, it says was upgraded burst mortar, special shells burst across wide area. Burst mortars can now trigger explosive combos. Now it's going to be upgraded burst mortar. Special shells burst across wide area, creates a large physical explosion for each enemy hit. So another pretty fundamental change there for the Colossus as well. Let me know what you guys make of those changes for your Colossus, and let me know if you are maining the Colossus as well. Now, I know a lot of you guys love the Interceptor. Pretty OP stuff here. So let's see if they've nerfed the Interceptor or buffed him even more. So yeah, let's talk about the Interceptor right now. So, Interceptor component says survival algorithm increased to 40% for 10 seconds from 20% for 10 seconds. And Talisman of Power increased to 60% for 10 seconds from 50% for 5 seconds. So far, we're getting some buffs. Then it says conductive latest. It says was performing a small melee hit streak, 3 detonates in electric explosion. Now melee hits detonate in electric explosion, can occur once every 2 seconds. All right, really cool stuff right there. And then it says Vengeance Matrix was all damage is increased by 25% for 5 seconds when suit health declines. Now on low armor, damage taken is reduced by 50% for 10 seconds. So again, some pretty significant fundamental changes here to how things are going to be working with the Interceptor. So let me know what you expect, especially think of the Conductive Lattice. That's something that I've been really relying on a lot, and I personally really love it. So it has definitely changed for sure. Alright, so it goes on to say this. The Way of the Salvage increased to 40% for 10 seconds from 40% for 5 seconds. And then Way of the Swift increased to 60% for 10 seconds from 50% for 5 seconds. So right there, overall, mostly a buff, I believe so. And then it says Wave the Bold increased to 40% armor restored from 20%. Wave the Integration increased to 30% for 10 seconds from 30% for 5 seconds. All of these changes, all of these buffs, make me wonder if they're going to do something with the difficulty setting down the road. It seems like they're leveling out all the Javelins and maybe preparing for something with the difficulty setting changing. Okay, so it says Interceptor gear. Let's talk about Interceptor gear, shall we? So this is what we're on right now. It says Caraph's Talon, increased base damage kick by 200%, remove cooldown, increase to 50% armor, restore. So we have a lot of stuff we need to try out, guys, in streams. So stay tuned to my streams. Check them out in the description below. I cannot wait to get in there. And then Rainier's Charge, increased base damage by 25%, removed cooldown. Serpent's Veil, increased base damage by 35%, changed to trigger on melee hit from on melee kills. And then Shadow Claw was Wraith Strike, instantly recharged with a small kill streak of 2. Now it launches 2 Wraith projections that seek enemies. So there you have that one. And then Absolute Zero, removed requirement of being above target, increased explosions damage. Tons of different things happening. Again, with basically the base of what these abilities do, for sure. Now, a lot of us have said time and time again, the Ranger, man, the Ranger is just too freaking weak. BioWare, please do something about it. You know what? Let's see what BioWare did about this Ranger. So it says Ranger components. Tactical advantage was increased engine heat threshold, max stamina by 35%, weak points hits lower, thruster heat build up by 10% for 5 seconds. Now what is it? It says increase engine heat threshold, max stamina by 50%, weak point hits lower, thruster heat build up by 80% for 10 seconds. And then Badge of Devastation was increases assault launcher by 15%, performing a large hit streak 10 will instantly add 1% ultimate charge. Now increases assault launcher by 30%, performing a large hit streak of 10 will instantly add 3% ultimate charge. So another buff right there. What about Victor's Resolve? It says was increases blast damage by 50% and decreases impact damage by 20%. Performing a small multi-kill instantly restores 25% armor. Now increases blast damage by 50% and decreases impact damage by 20%. And then performing a small multi-hit of 2 instead of 3 instantly restores 25% armor. So again, technically that's going to also be a buff as well. Now they also describe the second wind. It says was the defensive bulwark. Was increases all gun damage by 25% on low health, increases gun damage by 25% for 10 seconds. Now second wind is going to increase all gun damage by 25%. And then on low health, increases gun damage by 60% for 10 seconds. So again, boom, another buff right there. Great. The Ranger definitely absolutely needs a lot of these buffs. Now, Elemental Ops says increases, it says this, was increases fire damage and max heat capacity by 20%, and fire resistance was 20%, increases elemental effects applied to enemy by 20%. So now what is going on with Elemental Ops? It says this right here, increases fire damage and max heat capacity by 50% and fire resistance by 50% on a hit streak. 5 applies acid to the target. Nice. That's definitely going to be something worthwhile to check out for the Ranger going forward. And then Combined Arms says increases grenade damage by 5%, defeating an enemy with assault launcher gear increases grenade damage, gear damage by 60% for 5 seconds. This was in the was category. But what is it now, Robbie? Well, it says increases grenade damage by 30%. Hitting an enemy with assault launcher, gear increases grenade damage by 60% for 10 seconds. Boom. Ranger getting some buffs. Getting some loving right there. Now it goes on to describe airborne advantage changes as well. It says was increases impact damage by 35% and decreases blast damage by 35%. Hovering increases all resistances by 10%. Now it says increases impact damage by 50% and decreases blast damage by 20%. So right there, some good stuff there. But it looks like we've got a buff and a nerf simultaneously. Then it says hovering increases all resistance by 25%. So overall, airborne advantage has been buffed. Tip of the spear is up next, as was increases combo damage by 50%. Performing a combo restores 40% armor to nearby allies. But now, tip of the spear increases combo damage by 60%. Performing a combo restores 40% armor to nearby allies. Now, General's Favor is one that I definitely do use all the time for my Ranger right here. Now, it says increases assault launcher recharge by 35%. Defeating an enemy with melee increases grenade damage by 50% for 10 seconds. But now it increases grenade recharge by 40%. You can see the difference there. Hitting an enemy with melee increases grenade damage by 45% for 10 seconds. So it seems like to me this is both a buff and a nerf. So that's interesting. And it changes stuff completely fundamentally. So that's interesting. We'll have to test it out. Vanguard's badge says increases melee damage by 30% and electric effects by 30%. Performing a melee kill restores 20% shields. This has all been buffed by, looks like, roughly 10% here for the melee damage. And then right here, it's going to be 20% buff. So overall, Vanguard's bad. Boom. Buff. Now we're going to talk about the Ranger gear right now going forward. Argo's Mace increased base damage by 25%. Avenger's Boon increased melee damage by 210% for 20 seconds. Now this was 110% for 20 seconds. So big buff on that one. Cold-Blooded, I cannot wait to try that. Big time. And then it says Cold-Blooded change to on-hit increased melee damage by 235% for 10 seconds. Was 135% for 10 seconds when freezing enemies. And then Ember's Lance increased explosion damage right there. And then also Explosive Blaze changed to on-hit and removed cooldown was igniting enemies as well. Now, if you need to pause this, guys, and want to review the screen and stuff, you can do that as well during the course of the video. Now, we're going to talk about the grand opening. My goodness, tons of change. We haven't even gotten to the storm. Dude. Now, let's talk about grand opening. It says, was upgraded Seeker Grenade splits into Seeking Submunitions. Ambusher's Fury, defeating enemies from above grants 75% increase of weapon damage for 20 seconds. But what about now? Upgraded Seeker Grenade splits into submunition still. Striker's Fury, though, instead of Ambusher's Fury, it says hitting enemies grants 60% increase from weapon damage for 20 seconds right there. Again, fundamentally changing that whole thing right there. Recurring Vengeance was upgraded Seeking Missile combo effect. Impact after defeating an enemy. Regain 100% charge can occur every 7.5 seconds. And then now it's upgraded Seeking Missile combo effect. Impact detonating combo grants 100% charge. Let me know what you guys make of those changes right there. Now the Gambit has seen some changes. Has increased damage of ice explosions. So yeah, overall with the Ranger we just saw buff. So that's a definite right there. I am so hyped to get into this and mess around with my builds going forward. It feels like everything has basically changed with Anthem under the hood when it comes to the Javelins. But that's not all. We got the Storm to talk about. Oh my god, a whole list of stuff to talk about with the Storm right now. So we're going to be talking about the Storm components first of all. Amulet of Winters has increased to 30% damage for 20 seconds, was 20% for 20 seconds. Mark of Clarity increased to 40% armor restored with no cooldown, was 20% with 10-second cooldown. Mark of Ruin was increases fire damage and fire effect, while Blast Seal recharges Focus Seal damage increases by 40% for 20 seconds. Increases fire damage and fire effect. This is what's happening now with Mark of Ruin. After applying a status effect, increases fire damage by 50% for 10 seconds. I can't believe how much stuff is changing. I'm still blown away by this. Mark of Wrath, it says, was increases gear damage and lowers gear recharge rate, while Focus Seal recharges Blast Seal damage increased by 50% for 5 seconds. But now it's going to increase gear damage and lower gear recharge rate. Detonating a combo causes larger electrical explosion right there. All right, so also we have the Token of Daring. It says, was increases elemental damage and decreases physical damage. A shield break increases seal damage by 20% for 20 seconds. But now what's going to be happening with Token of Daring is that it's going to increase elemental damage and decrease physical damage. On shield break, instantly recharge all gear. So that's what you have right there. Instead of increases seal damage by 20% for 20 seconds, instead it's going to instantly recharge all that gear. Now, the Token of Master increased to 60% for 10 seconds, was 60% for 5 seconds. Token of the Pupil says increased to 60% for 10 seconds, was 60% for 5 seconds. And then the Tome of Precision, it says previously it was increases electric damage and electric effect. Sniper rifle weak points kill increase electric damage by 60% for 5 seconds. And then now Tome of Precision is this. Increases electric damage and electric effect. Defeating an enemy increases elemental damage by 40% for 10 seconds. So there you have that one. Vanguard's token says this. Increased to 40% for 10 seconds. Was 10% for 20 seconds. Now, moving on, there were some additional changes here to the Storm gear, as you can see. It says, Hellstorm's Renewal, remove requirement of being above target, increase base damage by 25%. Seal of the Open Mind, remove requirement of being above target, now permanently has 2 charges. Venomous Blaze, increases base damage by 50%, change from every 3rd hit to every 3rd consecutive hit. And then Winter's Wrath, it says, increase base number of charges and recharge rate. And then the 10,000 Suns was upgraded Burning Orb, combo effect, Chain, Striker's Wrath. After hitting an enemy, gain 5% increased damage for 5 seconds, stacking to 20. But what's happening now with 10,000 Suns? It says upgraded Burning Orb, combo effect, Chain, Striker's Wrath. After hitting an enemy, gain 10% increased damage for 10 seconds, stacking to 10. And then we have Black Ice. It says change to hitting an enemy freezes nearby creatures, was defeating an enemy. So now all you have to do is hit the enemy. So buff there. Note, must sustain the beam on a single creature for the duration of the ability. So there that is. Now, there's a bunch of additional stuff in here with patch notes. I can't go over all of that right now in a single video. As you can see, this was huge changes to a lot of the, basic Ranger and other Javelin gameplay. A lot of stuff for the Interceptor, Colossus, and Storm, of course. But there are, like, additional changes here, as you can see right here. I might make another video about it, but changes to the components for the Ranger, as you can see here. If you want to pause the screen and take a look at these, check those out. And then also some changes to the Universal components as well. Again, if you want to pause the screen, check this out for sure. But yeah, significant stuff going on under the hood with Anthem. But also, if you want to see the patch notes, again, see the description below. You could read them for yourself as well. So a bunch of stuff. So they also mentioned that they've reduced the weapon reload times by speeding up reload animation for the Colossus heavy weapons. Then some other stuff about Javelins, Interceptor melee. You guys know this can now execute multiple melee attacks with a single held input as well. And then some other stuff here. Interceptor can now detonate combos even if they have an aura currently active. And then increase the maximum stamina for the thruster meter for all Javelins. We know that by 20%. So yeah, tons and tons of stuff. And then there's even more. Like, there is so much crazy stuff. I covered a lot of it in a previous video. check that out in the description below or on the channel. But look at this, tons of fixes. Oh my god, changes everywhere. And of course, we're getting the legendary missions and the Elysian caches. So yeah, this video was a very big video. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the changes just by briefly taking a look at them through this video or through the patch notes. And is it worth your time checking out a Javelin that you've probably neglected? Let me know that as well. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned here for more, and I will see you next time. Take care.